Hello and welcome to today's episode of Taekwondo Life Magazine Live. My name is Master Marc Zirogiannis. I'm your host, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Taekwondo Life Magazine. We are a member of the Believe Network. Do you believe? Today's episode, like all, are presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, to NHL and UFC, BetOnline is the number one sports betting source for the new year. From touchdowns to three-pointers and hat tricks, BetOnline has you covered on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Thank you. And we are talking today about emergency preparedness and first aid and a bunch of other things that have come to my mind as a result of a couple of things. Number one is I'm taking my biannual first aid CPR renewal from the American Red Cross. And while I was doing that, some thoughts came to mind which I'll share. And the other is these horrible, terrible fires that are engulfing parts of the Los Angeles area, and a post from a Taekwondo school owner and seeing his school just decimated, just wiped out. And it made me think about a couple of things, and sometimes our minds, different things that seem unconnected become related based upon how we perceive them and things that we think about. So, as I took the CPR course, or as I'm taking the CPR course, and I'm taking the first aid course and the AED course, I thought to myself, while this isn't probably required in most jurisdictions for Taekwondo school owners and staff, I was just wondering what percentage of Taekwondo school owners are trained or have people on the staff trained in CPR and first aid and AED use. I think that none of us want to be in a position where if something horrific occurs that we have to deal with it ourselves. And for those of us that are in more urban areas in particular, 911 is a phone call away, and usually medical services, police, ambulance, fire could all be with us pretty quickly. But there is still some downtime there, and that downtime could cause significant harm to someone who is injured in need of first aid. And I wonder what percentage of our listeners, what percentage of the Taekwondo community, when we go to major tournaments, there's always doctors and medics that are there, and that's so important. But what about in the Dojang? What about when we're back closer to home? Certainly, there's the possibility that someone can get injured in Taekwondo training, but I don't necessarily think that's the largest part of it, although that is part of it. I think that a big part of it is other types of things like allergic reactions, heart attack, anaphylaxis, things of that nature. And how prepared are we as Taekwondo masters and practitioners? When you take the Kukkiwon International Masters course, there is a segment on first aid, but it isn't part of the certification. There may be one question on the test or so. It's important for us to know. We get nervous. We don't necessarily want to be in that situation. However, it would be much worse to be in that situation and have no training at all. Furthermore, do we have the relevant equipment that's needed? Do we have a good first aid kit that is consistently checked on and replenished? I know in our school, Band-Aids or ice packs are the two things that are most utilized. But how often is that stuff replaced? AEDs, very, very expensive. Some training involved. They are, once you get involved in using them, they're very, very easy to use, and they can be life-saving. The question is how many schools, how many locations have those AEDs on site and people trained to use them? For the CPR, how many are trained? How many continue to go on with the CPR training? How many mouth masks to cover and create breathing barriers are on site? How often are those things checked? What about blood mitigation kits? Somebody gets cut, somebody gets hurt, somebody bleeds. Do we have tourniquets on site? Do we have the type of kits that I was looking at that have significant gauze that has blood reduction kits, severe bleeding control things, tourniquets, wraps, things of that nature, scissors, basic gauze tape, things of that nature. How many of these types of things, EpiPens for the possibility that someone were to need an EpiPen, how many of these things are contained in our Dojang in the event that we were faced with that, hopefully never, but maybe once or twice in a lifetime, opportunities to help our students or our parents? Remember, we have other people that come into the Dojang, parents, grandparents sometimes. What if someone fell and hit their head? Do we have the proper protocol for if someone were to go into shock? Things of that nature. People work hard. There's the possibility that someone could actually go into hypothermia. Do we know how to deal with that? Is there a blanket available to keep someone comfortable and a pillow? Things that we may not think about when we think about what is required to run a Dojang. Now for a word from our sponsor. Okay, we're back. We're talking about emergency preparedness, first aid, CPR, AEDs. But also, as I looked at this fire, do we have emergency preparedness training? Do we have a plan in place as Dojang owners in the event that an emergency occurs? This will occur. Is there some sort of emergency insurance that's in place in the event that there's a total loss as a result of a fire or a flood? A few years ago, some of my friends who have Dojangs in Houston, there was tremendous snow there, and they ended up with, or San Antonio, I apologize, there was flooding there. Is there business interruption insurance? All things that need to be looked at. Is there an evacuation plan for your facility, whether you own your building or you're in another building? Do you have a map there, a fire map, in the event there's fires? Do you have fire extinguishers? How often are those fire extinguishers serviced? Sprinkler systems, things of that nature, are they checked? These are things that, like any insurance policy, which is really what they are, that you hope that you never need them, but in the event that you do need them, it's vital that they are accessible, up to date, and that you understand how to use them. Is there a written emergency action plan for loss of power, for, again, fire, for flooding, for in the event that there's active, as I hate to say it in today's day and age, active shooter training? Our Dojang we took with the Nassau County Police Department, we took active shooter response training. Things we don't like to think about, but things that we must think about. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear what is common out there in all parts of the country, whether you be in an urban, whether you be in a rural area, whether you are multiple owner or a school owner or a single Dojang owner, whether you own your building or whether you rent. I'd love to know what is the least and the most that you have on site. And if you need resources, the Red Cross's website is excellent. It's excellent for training. They probably will come in if you want to train your staff and bring a trainer in and do a CPR, AED, and first aid training class and certification. And again, from a marketing standpoint, something that you can tell your parents that come in. Our staff is all certified in first aid, CPR, and AED, and certified by the American Red Cross. I believe it really does have a value, and that parents, I know myself as a parent, I would certainly appreciate that. So I'd love to hear more from you. I'll see you in the Dojang, and I will see you on the mat. Team trials is just around the corner, and we'll be reporting from that. This is Master Marc Zirogiannis, and this episode has been brought to you by Bet Online.
Do you believe?